What happens when the man who destroyed your life tries to do it all over again? Anna Lawson was invisible. After a bitter divorce, left her with nothing but her broken dreams and a mountain of debt, her ex-husband Brent thought she was finished. He invited her to the year's most exclusive gala, not as a guest, but as a target, a broken toy he could parade in front of his new life. He wanted to shame her. He wanted to break her. What he didn't know was that the most powerful man in the room, the billionaire everyone was there to impress, had a secret. And that secret was Anna. The invitation was not an olive branch. It was a weapon. It arrived on a Tuesday, a day already gray with drizzle and the lingering smell of turpentine from Anna Lawson's struggling art restoration business. The envelope was obscenely heavy, thick cream cardstock that felt like armor. Her name, Ms. Anna Lawson, was written in sharp, precise calligraphy. It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. The annual Titans Ball. A grotesque name for a grotesque display of wealth held this year in the Grand Cathedral Ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. Anna sank onto the worn stool in her tiny studio apartment, which doubled as her workshop. Her fingers stained with pigment and aching from delicate work traced the embossed logo of Walker Industries. Brent's company. His company. The one they had built together until he decided she was dead weight. "He can't be serious," she whispered, her breath fogging the cold window. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend Sophie. "You got it, didn't you?" Sophie's voice was tight with anger. "I'm holding it," Anna replied, feeling the sharp edge of the cardstock. It was like a paper cut, a small, precise slice of pain. "You're throwing it in the incinerator, right, or at least the recycling bin?" "No, the shredder. Anna, you are not going." I don't know." "What is there to know? He's a monster. He took the house, the savings, he even fought you for the good knives. He's doing this to humiliate you, Anna. He wants to show off his new 22-year-old arm candy and point at you in what you can afford." Sophie was right. Anna looked around. Her life was a collection of half-repaired canvases that paid her pennies on the dollar for her expertise. After the divorce, Brent's lawyers had systematically portrayed her as a hobbyist, a dilettante with no real-world skills. Her art history degree, her specialized training in pre-Renaissance restoration, cute, Brent had called it in court. He had generously let her keep her little painting hobby. Now she lived in a 400-square-foot walk-up, her main client, a mysterious anonymous collector known only as Mr. G, who sent priceless artifacts via a white-glove courier service and paid 3 times her asking rate. Mr. G was the only reason she was still solvent. "He wants me to feel small, Soph," Anna said, her voice hardening. "He's been doing it for a decade. He did it every day of our marriage. He's still doing it. So don't let him. Don't go." "No," Anna said, a spark igniting in her chest. It was a cold, unfamiliar fire. "No, you're wrong. The only way to stop him from having this power is to show him he has none. I'm going." "Anna, what are you going to wear?" "The dress you wore to my cousin's wedding." Anna looked at her closet. Her options were a sensible navy sheath dress and, well, mostly just the sensible navy sheath dress. "I'll figure it out," she said, though her stomach was a knot of ice. "He expects me to hide. He expects me to be broken. I may be broke, Sophie, but I am not broken." The next 3 days were a blur. Anna cashed the check from Mr. G for her most recent project, restoring a 17th-century Dutch miniature. The payment was, as always, conspicuously large. It was enough. Enough for the rent, the utilities, and one more thing. She went not to a high-end boutique but to a curated consignment shop on the Upper East Side, one favored by socialites who only wore things once. There in the back she found it. A deep emerald green velvet gown. It was simple, long-sleeved, and devastatingly elegant. It fit her like a second skin. It wasn't new, but it was timeless. She paired it with the only good jewelry she had left, her grandmother's simple pearl earrings. Standing in her cramped bathroom, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. The stains were scrubbed from her hands. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon, and her eyes looked like a soldier's. "You will not break me, Brent," she whispered to the mirror. "You will never, ever break me again." She took a taxi, not a limo. As she pulled up to the glittering facade of the plaza, she saw them. Brent Walker, broad-shouldered and smug in a custom tuxedo with a girl on his arm. Tiffany. She was impossibly tall, wearing a dress that seemed to be made of strategically placed red sequins and a lot of ambition. Anna paid the driver, took a deep breath, and stepped out onto the curb. The air was cold, but she felt nothing. She was a restorer. She knew how to handle fragile things, and tonight she would prove she was not one of them. The Grand Cathedral Ballroom was designed to make mortals feel small. Vaulted ceilings dripped with crystal chandeliers, and the walls were adorned with gold leaf that shimmered like captured sunlight. A full orchestra played something classical and unobtrusive. The room was filled with the braying laughter of old money and the shark-like smiles of the new. Anna felt the familiar cold tentacles of imposter syndrome wrap around her. Her velvet dress, which had felt so elegant in her tiny apartment, now seemed dull and heavy. Every other woman was a riot of diamonds and designer labels. She was a sparrow in a flock of peacocks. She moved toward the bar, needing something to hold. A glass of sparkling water. Anything. "Well, well, well." The voice hit her like a physical blow. Brent. It was smoother than she remembered, oiled with success and arrogance. She turned. He was standing there, Tiffany plastered to his side, her red dress-clad hip jutting out. Brent's eyes raked over Anna, a slow, insulting appraisal. "Anna, darling," he said, his voice loud enough for the small cluster of investors nearby to hear. "I am so surprised you came. I thought the admission price might be a little steep for you. Oh, wait, I sent you a ticket, didn't I?" "A little charity," his friends chuckled. Anna kept her spine straight. "Hello, Brent. Tiffany." Tiffany just stared at her, her expression blank, as if trying to calculate Anna's net worth and coming up with zero. "Is that velvet?" Brent continued, leaning in conspiratorially. "How wonderfully vintage. You always were so frugal, weren't you, Annie?" He called her Annie, the name he used when he was about to belittle her, to gently correct her, to turn her passion into a punchline. "It's good to see you, Brent," Anna said, her voice as level as she could make it. "You're looking well." "I am well," he boomed. "In fact, I'm better than well. We're about to close the biggest deal of my career, a complete game changer. But you wouldn't know about that. How's the painting still playing with your little chemicals and brushes?" He turned to his group. "This is my ex-wife, Anna. She's an artist. She fixes old pictures. It's very sweet." The condescension was so thick she could have bottled it. Anna just smiled, a tiny, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Something like that." "Oh, Brent, don't be mean," Tiffany purred, running a red-taloned hand down his lapel. "She's trying. It's cute." Cute. The word that had defined her marriage. Brent's smile widened. He was enjoying this. This was the entire point. He had summoned her here to be the before picture to his after. "Actually, Anna," he said, grabbing 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter's tray, "I'm glad you're here. I wanted to thank you." He handed her a glass. She took it, her hand wary. "Thank me for what?" "For being so agreeable in the divorce. You understood your place. You knew you didn't contribute, so you didn't take. I respect that. It showed humility. And you do have so much to be humble about." The champagne in her hand trembled. The orchestra swelled. This was it, the public execution. "So a toast," Brent said, raising his glass. "To my past for knowing when to get out of the way of my future." He clinked his glass against hers a little too hard, and as he did, his other hand, the one holding his own glass, tilted. A torrent of cold, bubbling champagne cascaded down the front of Anna's dress. It was a perfect, deliberate waterfall of gold liquid. It soaked the velvet, turning the deep green to a sickly dark mess. It clung to her cold and sticky. Gasps, a few nervous titters. "Oh, goodness!" Brent exclaimed, his face a mask of fake horror. "Clumsy me, I am so sorry, Anna. Oh, look at that. It's completely ruined." Tiffany covered her mouth, but her eyes were dancing with undisguised glee. "It's just all over you," Brent said, stepping back. "Here." He grabbed a cocktail napkin from a tray and dabbed at her chest, a gesture that was both proprietary and insulting. "Though, to be honest, it's probably an improvement. That color was a bit funereal, don't you think?" Anna stood frozen. She was drenched. She was sticky. She could feel the eyes of everyone in that glittering, horrible room boring into her. She was the charity case, the clumsy ex-wife, the pathetic ruined before picture. The laughter in Brent's eyes was the final twist of the knife. She wanted to evaporate. She wanted to scream. Instead, she just put her wet glass down on a table. The champagne in her mouth had turned to ash. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice choked. She turned and fled, pushing her way through the crowd of silent, judging faces. She didn't head for the main doors. She couldn't bear the walk of shame past the coat check. She saw a set of French doors and pushed through them, stumbling out onto a cold, dark terrace. The music faded, replaced by the sound of city traffic and the biting October wind. It whipped her hair from its chignon, stinging her wet face. She gripped the cold stone balustrade, her knuckles white, and finally let the tears come. They were hot, angry, and humiliating. He had won. Again. The terrace was a dark refuge. Below Central Park was a black, sprawling void, and the lights of the city seemed to mock her. Anna's sobs were raw, torn from her throat. She had been so stupid, so naive, thinking she could walk back into his world and survive. She had worn her dignity like armor, and he had shattered it with a single careless gesture. The velvet of her dress was heavy and cold, clinging to her skin like a shroud. She was wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to catch her breath, when a voice, deep and impossibly calm, cut through the night. "That was without question the most barbaric display I have witnessed since my last board of directors meeting." Anna spun around, mortified. She hadn't been alone. A man was standing in the deepest shadows by the far wall, almost invisible. All she could see was the silhouette of a tall, impeccably tailored suit and the red-orange glow of a lit cigarillo. He took a step forward into the faint light spilling from the ballroom. He was not what she expected. He wasn't one of Brent's loud, backslapping colleagues. He looked to be in his late 40s with striking salt-and-pepper hair, a strong jaw, and eyes so dark and intelligent they seemed to absorb the light. He was impossibly handsome, but it was a quiet, severe handsomeness. He looked more like a scholar than a tycoon. He held out a perfectly folded white linen handkerchief. "He did that on purpose," the man stated. It wasn't a question. Anna took the handkerchief, her hand shaking. It was monogrammed. GP. "Yes," she whispered, her voice still thick. "He did." "Your ex-husband, I presume. Brent Walker." Anna dabbed at her face, startled. "You know him." "I know of him," the man said, his voice laced with a faint, unplaceable European accent. "He has been persistent in trying to get my attention. He seems to believe I am the key to his next great success." The man took another step, studying her, not with pity, but with a sharp, analytical curiosity. "You are Anna Lawson. You specialize in this conservation of 17th-century Dutch and Flemish oil miniatures. Your preferred solvent is a custom-balanced benzyl alcohol gel, and you believe that modern restorers are too quick to in-paint, sacrificing authenticity for aesthetics." Anna's blood ran cold. The tears stopped instantly. Who are you?" He smiled, a small, almost imperceptible lift at the corner of his mouth. He took a final draw from the cigarillo and then stubbed it out in a planter. Forgive me, we've been corresponding for 9 months, but we've never been formally introduced. He stepped fully into the light. I'm Gabriel Price. But you know me as Mr. G. Anna's knees went weak. She gripped the balustrade. Gabriel Price. Not just a Gabriel Price. The Gabriel Price. The reclusive, borderline mythical private equity kingmaker. The man Forbes had dubbed the Phantom of Wall Street. The man Brent had been obsessed with landing for the last 6 months. Brent's game-changing deal was an infrastructure project that needed a primary investor, and that investor was rumored to be Price. You're Mr. G, she stammered. But the pieces you sent, the Winter Duchess, the Vermeer sketch, are all part of my private collection, Gabriel finished. I inherited a great many things, Ms. Lawson, but my father had terrible taste in restorers. They were butchers. They smothered history. Then I read your graduate thesis published in a very obscure art journal, the one on pigment degradation, and I knew you were the one. He looked at the champagne-soaked mess of her dress. He doesn't know, does he, what you do? He calls it my hobby, Anna said, bitterness returning. His ignorance is staggering, Gabriel said flatly. I have been in that room for 2 hours, Ms. Lawson, surrounded by people who believe they are the titans of the universe. And the only true genius I have found is out here freezing and covered in cheap champagne. Anna didn't know what to say. The entire world had just tilted on its axis. The man who had been silently funding her survival was the man her ex-husband was desperate to impress. Gabriel looked back through the glass doors, his expression darkening as he saw Brent now holding court, regaling his friends with the story of Anna's humiliation. He wanted to make you a joke, Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous frequency. He wanted to show his new vapid acquisition that he had discarded something worthless. He turned back to Anna. His dark eyes were intense. He made a catastrophic error. He assumed no one else would see your value, and in doing so he has just handed me the weapon I need to destroy him. Destroy him, Anna repeated, shocked. I do not suffer fools, Ms. Lawson, and I do not under any circumstances abide bullies. He humiliated a person I hold in the highest possible esteem. He will not finish the night on his feet. He checked his watch, a slim, elegant Patek Philippe. But first we must rectify this. He gestured to her dress. You cannot return to the battle in ruined armor. Return, Anna said, shaking her head. I'm not returning. I'm calling a cab and going home. No, Gabriel said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You are not. You will not give him the satisfaction of your retreat. You will give me the satisfaction of your return. He pulled out his phone and typed a single swift text. I have a suite upstairs, he said, pocketing the device. My assistant will have options waiting. We are going to fix this, and then you and I are going to walk back into that ballroom, and we are going to finish this. Anna looked at this man, this phantom who knew her preferred solvents and held her ex-husband's fate in his hands. The cold was gone. All she felt was a terrifying blazing heat. What are you going to do? Gabriel Price offered her his arm. I'm going to give him exactly what he wants. He wants to introduce his ex-wife to the world. I'm just going to amend the introduction. Gabriel led Anna not through the ballroom but through a private staff corridor. His movements were silent and economical. He swiped a black keycard at a service elevator and they ascended in complete silence, the only sound the expensive hum of the machinery. Mr. Price. Anna started wiping her palms on the still damp velvet. I don't understand. Why do all this? You're my client, but... Ms. Lawson, he interrupted gently as the elevator chimed. Your work, your mind, has been the only truly civilized conversation I've had in a year. Brent Walker and his ilk, they trade in concrete and steel. They build things. You save things. You save history. It's a far more valuable skill. The doors opened directly into a sprawling penthouse suite. It was larger than her entire apartment building. A fire roared in a marble fireplace and the lights of the city glittered from floor-to-ceiling windows. A severe-looking woman with a tablet was waiting. "Mr. Price, Ms. Lawson." On a king-sized bed laid out with impossible speed were 3 gowns. Not just gowns. Gowns. One was a classic black, another a startling silver, but it was the third that caught Anna's eye. It was a deep midnight blue, almost black, crafted from a heavy silk that seemed to drink the light. It was an Oscar de la Renta. "That one," Gabriel said, instantly confirming her choice. "There are shoes and accessories in the dressing room," the assistant said, already moving to dispose of the other 2 dresses. "You have 15 minutes. Mr. Price will be waiting." Anna was bustled into a bathroom that was a symphony of white marble. She washed the champagne from her skin, her hands still shaking. The dress fit as if it had been made for her. It was stark, powerful, and utterly sophisticated. In the dressing room, she found a pair of simple Manolo Blahnik heels, and in a small velvet box, a Bulgari necklace, a single brilliant diamond suspended on a whisper-thin platinum chain. When she emerged, Gabriel Price was waiting by the window, a fresh pocket square in his suit. He turned, and for the first time his analytical gaze softened. He didn't just look. He saw. "Brent Walker," Gabriel said quietly, "is a fool." He held out the necklace. "May I?" Anna turned, her heart hammering as his fingers, warm and steady, brushed her neck to fasten the clasp. The diamond was cool against her skin. This is too much," she whispered. "It is precisely enough," he replied, his voice close to her ear. "It's a loan, unless, of course, you decide to keep it." He stepped back. "Now, the plan. It's very simple. Walker is chasing my investment. His entire project is leveraged on my signature. His board, his partners, they are all in that room tonight waiting for me to give the signal. And you're not going to—" "I am going to pivot," Gabriel said. "I am going to announce a new investment, a different one I find infinitely more compelling." "What investment?" Gabriel smiled. "The Price Lawson Foundation for Art Preservation, a $100 million endowment to fund and elevate the science of restoration with you as its head curator and director." Anna stopped breathing. "What? That's... I can't." "You can and you will. I've had my lawyers drafting the charter for months. I was waiting for the right moment to present it to you. Mr. Walker has quite rudely provided that moment." He held out his arm again. "Are you ready, Ms. Lawson?" "He will be ruined," she said, her voice a small stunned whisper. "Yes," Gabriel said, his face unreadable. "He will. He built his entire future on the assumption that you were worthless. It is only fitting that he be undone by the truth of your worth." Anna looked at the man before her. He wasn't a savior. He was an accelerant. He wasn't saving her. He was showing her the weapons she already possessed. She took a breath, not of champagne and ash, but of fire and steel. "My name," she said, "is Anna." "I know," he replied. She placed her hand on his arm. "Let's go." The walk from the private elevator back to the grand cathedral ballroom was the longest of Anna's life. Every step was a contradiction. Just an hour ago she had fled down this same corridor, a pathetic, sodden creature, her footsteps a frantic, humiliating retreat. Now she returned. The midnight blue silk of the gown whispered around her ankles a sound of pure liquid power. It was not a dress, it was armor. The diamond at her throat was not jewelry. It was a talisman, cool and heavy against her skin, a focal point of light. Beside her, Gabriel Price was a silent, solid wall of purpose. He did not rush. He walked with a deliberate, unhurried pace, and Anna matched him step for step. She felt his strength, his absolute control, and she drew from it. This was not a walk of shame. This was a procession. They reached the grand archway of the ballroom. The doors were thrown open, spilling a wave of golden light and the sound of a jaunty waltz into the hall. The braying laughter and clinking glasses were a wall of noise. They paused, not from hesitation but for a single theatrical beat. Gabriel understood optics. He understood the power of an entrance. Then they stepped through the arch into the light. If her first entrance had been invisible, this one was a thunderclap. Or, rather, it was the opposite, a sonic vacuum. The orchestra's waltz faltered, one violin screeching into the void before it too fell silent. The clinking of glasses stopped. The braying laughter died in a dozen throats. A physical wave of silence rippled outward from the doorway as one by one the titans of industry turned. And then the whispers, a sibilant rush like dry leaves skittering across marble. "Who is that? My God, is that Walker's ex, the one he spilled champagne on? It can't be. Look at her. That necklace. Is that the Bulgari azure I thought it was in a vault in Geneva? She's with him. She's with Gabriel Price." Anna felt the heat of 100 stares. They were no longer looks of pity or dismissal. They were looks of shock, of envy, of sudden sharp calculation. In her old life this would have undone her. But the woman who had fled to the terrace was gone. Anna drew on the same meticulous discipline she used to restore a 17th-century canvas. She kept her eyes forward, her spine a steel rod. Her chin was high. She was not there for them. She was on a mission. Her gaze was fixed on a point in the center of the room, a target. Brent. He was oblivious. He was holding court with a small group of older, serious-looking men, the board. He had his back to the door, a fresh glass of champagne in his hand, his voice loud as he regaled them with some anecdote. He was the king of his small, self-made castle. But Tiffany, standing beside him, was a predator. She sensed the shift in the room's atmosphere before he did. Her painted-on smile froze. She looked up, her eyes scanning the crowd, and then she saw them. Her face, a mask of bored, practiced glamour, collapsed. The smile vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed gape. Her eyes, wide with confusion, darted from Anna's face to the impossible dress, to the blazing diamond, and then with dawning horror to the man whose arm Anna held. Her red-taloned hand gripped Brent's arm, pinching him hard. "Brent," she hissed. "What?" He snapped, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it?" He turned, and his world stopped. It was a masterpiece of a man's psyche imploding in real time. First, pure animal confusion. Who is this woman? Then dawning, sickening recognition. Anna. And finally pure, unadulterated, pants-wetting shock as his brain processed the impossible. His Anna. With Gabriel Price. His eyes darted frantic and white. From Anna's face, calm, cold, and beautiful, to the diamond at her throat, to the hand she had resting possessively on Price's arm. He looked at her, dressed no longer a damp rag of velvet, but a shimmering column of couture. The blood drained from his face, leaving him looking chalky and sick under the warm ballroom lights. Gabriel did not pause. He did not wait for Brent to recover. He began to walk. He navigated the room as if he owned it. And the crowd, this collection of the most powerful people in the city, parted for them like the Red Sea. They created a silent, staring corridor, a pathway leading directly to the epicenter of Brent's humiliation. Anna walked with him, her steps measured. She felt like a queen. No, she felt like a restorer who had finally meticulously stripped away the grime to reveal the masterpiece beneath. Brent was frozen, a statue of his own arrogance. He was sweating now, a visible sheen on his forehead. He saw his boss, Mr. Henderson, watching him, his expression sharp and questioning. He saw his investors. He had to regain control. He had to frame this. As they stopped before him, Brent blundered forward, forcing a laugh that sounded like a cough. "Mr. Price, sir," he stammered, his voice too high. You made it. I was worried. And I see you've, met my ex-wife." It was his fatal error. He tried to claim them both, to frame it as his introduction, to put Anna back in the box he had built for her. He even fatally turned to Anna. "Anna, darling," he said, his voice a grotesque parody of their married life, "you really shouldn't be bothering Mr. Price. He's a very busy man. I'm sure he'd like to talk business now." He waved a hand, a nervous, dismissive gesture as if shooing a fly. It was the most condescending and most desperate act of his life. A hot, sharp retort died on Anna's lips. She felt Gabriel's subtle upward pressure on her hand. "Not yet. Let me." Gabriel Price stopped. He stood directly in front of Brent, close enough that Brent, who was not a small man, had to crane his neck slightly to look up at him. Gabriel didn't speak. He simply watched him. He let Brent drown in the silence he had created. He let him unravel under the weight of 100 staring eyes. Finally, when Brent looked like he was about to physically vibrate apart, Gabriel spoke. His voice was not loud. It was quiet. It was clear. And it carried sharp as a shard of ice to every corner of the now tomb-like room. "Mr. Walker." The use of his name was a slap. "I am indeed a busy man, which is why I am so bothered." The silence that fell over the Grand Cathedral ballroom was not merely a lack of sound. It was a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on every guest. The orchestra had long since faltered into a discordant halt, the musicians' frozen bows hovering uselessly over strings. Every eye, every watt of attention in that glittering, opulent room was locked onto the four people in the center: a terrified, sweating Brent, a furious, wide-eyed Tiffany, a regal, reborn Anna, and a lethal, utterly calm Gabriel Price. "You wanted to thank your past, Mr. Walker," Gabriel continued, his quiet voice slicing through the stillness with surgical precision. "You wanted to toast to what you left behind. You stood here in front of your colleagues and your superiors, and you celebrated your future by attempting to destroy the person who helped you build your present." Gabriel's gaze was unyielding, pinning Brent in place. "You seem to be under a fundamental misunderstanding of what and who you discarded. You thought you were casting off dead weight. You thought you were silencing a hobbyist. You thought you were making a joke." Brent opened his mouth, a desperate dry croak emerging. "Sir, Mr. Price, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. She is..." Gabriel interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. "Your catastrophic error in judgment." The words hung in the air. This was business language. This was the language Mr. Henderson, Brent's boss, understood. Henderson's face, which had been confused, now sharpened with sudden cold dread. Gabriel turned a subtle, deliberate movement that drew every eye with him. He faced Anna, and the cold, analytical mask he wore for the world seemed to dissolve, replaced by something warm and profoundly respectful. He took Anna's hand, not her arm, her hand. He didn't lift it to his lips, not yet. He simply held it, lacing his fingers with hers in a gesture of unmistakable possession of partnership. He presented their clasped hands to the room as if it were a new signed treaty. Anna's heart was a drum against her ribs. She felt the squeeze of his hand a silent command. "Stand with me. This is it." Gabriel turned his gaze back to the room, sweeping it over the investors, the board members, and finally landing with crushing finality on Brent Walker. "You may know her as your ex-wife." He paused, letting the title hang in the air, dripping with all the condescension Brent had loaded it with. "But I and the rest of the world will know her differently." He lifted their joined hands, slightly a declaration. "Gentlemen, ladies, I am honored to be the first to introduce you to Anna Lawson, my partner." A ripple of shock. Partner Brent's eyes widened. Mr. Henderson leaned forward. This was a business alliance. The future director of the $100 million Price Lawson Foundation for Art Preservation. A collective audible gasp. 100 million. Her name, the hobby, was now a global foundation. Brent's face, which had been pale, began to turn a sickly grayish green. He was choking. He understood now the nature of Mr. G. He understood the checks that had kept her afloat. And Gabriel added, his voice ringing with a final devastating clarity. My fiancée. Fiancée. The word dropped into the silence like a diamond dropped into a chasm. It was absolute. It was indefensible. It was the end of Brent Walker. Anna's shock was so profound she almost laughed. Her eyes snapped to Gabriel's. He gave her hand another infinitesimal squeeze, his expression never wavering. Trust me. Brent Walker's face imploded. It was a physical collapse. His arrogance, his confidence, his entire carefully constructed world. It all shattered in that single instant. His jaw went slack, his eyes bulged, and a visible sheen of cold sweat broke out on his forehead, matting his hair. He looked like a man who had just seen his own ghost. Tiffany, who had been clinging to him, let out a small strangled squeak as if she'd been electrocuted. She physically recoiled, her hand ripping away from his arm as if he were suddenly radioactive diseased. Her face contorted not with sympathy, but with pure, undiluted disgust. He was no longer a provider. He was a liability. It was Mr. Henderson, the chairman, who was the first to react. He was a shark. He saw his company's deal, his reputation, and his stock price all flashing before his eyes, circling the drain with Brent. He abandoned his subordinate instantly. Mr. Price, good heavens! Henderson bustled forward, his arm outstretched, his face split in a wide, desperate, beaming smile. He completely ignored Brent, pushing past him to shake Gabriel's hand while simultaneously beaming at Anna. Ms. Lawson. A fiancé. How wonderful. My deepest congratulations. This is splendid news. He turned, glaring at Brent with murder in his eyes, but his voice remained grotesquely cheerful. Brent, you dog, you never told us your ex-wife was engaged to Mr. Price? Keeping secrets, were we? The lie was so blatant, so desperate, that it was almost comical. He was trying to give Brent an out, to pretend this was all part of the plan. Gabriel did not let him. He didn't know, Gabriel said smoothly, accepting Henderson's handshake while keeping his other hand firmly, possessively clasped with Anna's. Brent and we haven't had a chance to discuss my personal life, or for that matter, my business. This was the killing blow. The pivot from personal to professional was swift and merciless. Mr. Price, the deal, Brent whispered. His voice was a dry, rasping rattle. The infrastructure project. Our partners. We're set to sign. Gabriel corrected him. The word was cold. We were set to sign. But you see, Mr. Henderson, I have a strict, inviolable policy. Henderson, still holding his smile, was now sweating almost as much as Brent. Sir, I do not partner with men who lack judgment. And a man, Gabriel's eyes raked over Brent, who would so profoundly misjudge the value of the assets and the people in his life. A man who would publicly humiliate the most brilliant mind in this room. A man who would throw champagne on my fiancée. He let that sink in, connecting Brent's personal cruelty directly to his professional incompetence. Well, that man, Mr. Henderson, demonstrates a catastrophic, unforgivable lack of judgment. Walker Industries has become a liability I will not underwrite. The deal is off. Effective immediately. Mr. Henderson's fake smile vanished, replaced by a mask of purple, apoplectic rage. He turned on Brent. Walker! He roared, his voice booming across the ballroom. You're an idiot. You're finished. But, Mr. Henderson? I can fix this, Brent sputtered, holding his hands out in a pathetic, pleading gesture. Fix it. You just cost this firm a $10 billion deal. You are done at Walker Industries. Clean out your desk. Walker. You are done. He stabbed a finger at a nearby security guard. Get him out of here. Brent just stood there, a hollowed-out shell in a custom tuxedo. He looked at Anna, his eyes finally landing on her. They were pleading, full of terror and a childlike, pathetic disbelief. "How could you do this to me?" they screamed. "You were nobody." Anna looked back at him. She searched inside herself for any lingering feeling. Pity, anger, even triumph. She found none. There was just nothing. A void. He was just as she had hoped, finally and completely powerless. He had ceased to exist for her. "Now," Gabriel said, raising his voice to the room which was buzzing with frantic, excited whispers. He smiled, a genuine warm smile directed only at Anna. "If you'll excuse us, my fiancé and I were just about to celebrate." He turned, tugging her gently toward the dance floor. He nodded to the terrified orchestra conductor. "And I believe, my dear, that this orchestra plays waltzes." The conductor jolted into action, immediately raised his baton. As Gabriel and Anna walked away, leaving the wreckage of Brent's life behind them, a final pathetic sound cut through the air. It was Tiffany, her voice sharp, cold, and carrying. "Don't you touch me, Brent. You're a loser." A sound followed, the sharp, definitive shatter of a champagne flute hitting the marble floor. The reign of Brent Walker was over. The orchestra, jolted from its stupor by the conductor's frantic wave, began to play. The melody was a soft, hesitant waltz, as if the music itself was afraid to intrude on the scene. The vast parquet dance floor was a deserted island in the middle of the glittering ballroom. Gabriel led Anna to its center. The other guests, a silent, staring ocean of diamonds and tuxedos, formed a wide, respectful circle around them, watching as if witnessing a coronation. He placed one hand on her waist, a light but firm pressure that grounded her. She rested her hand on his shoulder, feeling the fine wool of his suit, the solid strength beneath it. The silk of her gown whispered around her legs. The diamond at her throat felt like a small, cold star against her skin. The entire world, which had been spinning in a vortex of humiliation and terror, suddenly contracted to this single point. His hand in hers. His dark, steady eyes on hers. They began to move. It was a slow, graceful turn. Anna, who had felt so clumsy, so exposed, so utterly broken, just an hour before now, felt anchored. She was no longer a victim fleeing in a ruined dress. She was here in the eye of the storm she had created, held by the man who had summoned the thunder. "You're shaking," he murmured. His voice was for her alone a low vibration that seemed to travel directly from his chest to hers. "You told them I was your fiancé." She whispered back, her voice barely a breath. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of stunned, profound disbelief. She was still processing the sound of the word the way it had landed in the room, detonating Brent's life. "I did," he replied, his expression unreadable as he guided her in another smooth rotation. "You also announced $100 million foundation." The number felt absurd, impossible to say aloud. "I did." They danced in silence for a few more steps, the music swelling around them. The bubble of their solitude was absolute. Anna's mind was racing, trying to separate the tactical from the real. "Which one was the lie, Mr. Price?" "Gabriel," he corrected her, his voice gentle but firm. "My name is Gabriel." He paused, pulling her fractionally closer as they turned. "And that's the interesting part. Neither of them has to be." Anna's heart, which had been hammering a frantic rhythm of survival, skipped a beat and settled into a new heavy cadence. Neither of them has to be. The sheer breathtaking audacity of the statement. She looked into his eyes, searching for a hint of guile of a tycoon's manipulative play. She found none. She found only a startling, sober sincerity. I don't understand," she said, and it was the truest thing she'd ever said. "Anna," he said, his gaze intense, "the foundation is real. It is as real as the Vermeer sketch you restored for me." He saw the question in her eyes and answered it. "I've had my legal team chartering the Price Lawson Foundation for months. I was going to offer it to you next week in a quiet, boring office. This just seemed more efficient. Your work, your mind? It's a resource that should be shared with the world, not hidden in a walk-up working for scraps. $100 million. A foundation with her name on it. The work she had dreamed of, funding research, saving collections, training a new generation of restorers. It was the validation of her entire life, the life Brent had called a cute little hobby. The tears she had refused to shed in humiliation now pricked at her eyes in overwhelming, staggering gratitude. As for the other, he continued, his voice softening, that was an improvisation. A tactical maneuver. A tactical maneuver, she repeated, a small, shaky smile finally touching her lips. I saw him put his hands on you, Gabriel said, and for a fleeting instant his tone hardened into something cold and dangerous. I saw him douse you in champagne as if you were nothing. I wanted to make him understand in language he could not possibly misinterpret that you were not nothing, that you were protected, that you were in fact priceless. He paused, his self-assessment precise. It was a primitive, possessive impulse. My apologies. But it was, I calculated, effective. Yes, Anna said, thinking of the pulverized look on Brent's face. It was. However, he continued, spinning her gently as the waltz reached its crescendo, as I stood there with your hand in mine announcing it to that room of vipers, it didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a prophecy. They stopped dancing, though the music continued to swirl around them. They just stood in the center of the floor, the sole focus of hundreds of people. I have spent the last 9 months reading your emails, your notes, your analyses on pigment and canvas, he said, his voice dropping lower. I felt I knew you. I fell in love with your mind, Anna Lawson. Your precision, your passion, your absolute refusal to compromise on the truth of your work. Tonight, seeing your strength, seeing you face that animal and not break, I realized I was tired of corresponding with A.L. I want to know Anna. I want to partner with her in all things. This was it. The real proposal hidden beneath the public one. It wasn't about a dress or a diamond. It was about her mind. He wasn't saving a damsel. He was offering an alliance to an equal. Anna looked over his shoulder. The tableau of the room was frozen in her memory. Brent was gone, vanished in erasure. Mr. Henderson was deep in frantic, red-faced crisis talks with his partners. Tiffany, she noted with a distant sense of irony, was already laughing with a different, younger-looking man by the bar. The world had already forgotten Brent Walker. He hadn't been destroyed by a billionaire. He had been destroyed by his own fatal arrogance. He had been destroyed by the worthless woman he had thrown away. She brought her focus back to Gabriel, to this impossible, brilliant, and lethally decisive man who saw her, truly saw her. The foundation, Anna said, her voice clear and strong. I accept. It's the work I've always dreamed of doing. Good, he said, a genuine warmth spreading in his eyes. And as for the other proposition, Gabriel weighted, his expression unreadable, giving her the space to make her own choice. Anna smiled. It was a real smile, a true smile, one that started in her chest and rose to her eyes, lighting her entire face. I think you should ask me again, properly, when we are not the center of a corporate execution and I am not wearing your diamond. A slow, appreciative smile transformed his own face, chasing away the last of the shadows. Fair enough, Miss Lawson. Anna, she corrected him. Anna, he agreed. Tomorrow, breakfast. My suite, 10 a.m. We will discuss the charter and other things. It's a date, she said. He took her hand, the one he was holding, and this time he did raise it to his lips, kissing her knuckles with a gesture of old-world charm that felt less like romance and more like a sealing of an oath, a mark of profound respect. Now, he said, turning with her to face the room, I believe we are being congratulated. The spell was broken. The music swelled into a triumphant crescendo, and the crowd, seeing that the crisis was over and a new power couple had been anointed, surged forward. Mr. Price, Ms. Lawson, wonderful news. Congratulations, simply marvelous. Anna darling, you look breathtaking. We must have lunch. Faces that had been blank with pity or sharp with judgment just an hour ago were now wreathed in fawning, desperate smiles. Anna stood tall, the diamond at her throat blazing under the light. She kept her hand linked firmly with Gabriel's. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer the before picture. She was the future. She was a restorer, and she had just reclaimed her own life from the layers of dirt and grime. For the first time, she was the one holding the brush, and the canvas was entirely her own. Anna Lawson walked into that party as a ghost, a victim. Her ex-husband thought he could break for his own amusement. She walked out as a leader, a fiancée, and the head of her own $100 million foundation. Brent didn't just lose a deal. He lost his career, his reputation, and his power, all because he fundamentally misunderstood the value of the woman he cast aside. He tried to shame her, but he only succeeded in revealing his own worthlessness. Karma, as they say, has a way of settling all debts, and sometimes it does it in a packed ballroom with the whole world watching. What did you think of Anna's incredible comeback? Have you ever seen someone so spectacularly underestimate the person they hurt? Let us know your favorite part of this story in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where karma delivers the final crushing blow, be sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a single story of justice being served.